One of the biggest buzzwords right now in any industry is AI, so it's not surprising that marketers would be looking to see how they can leverage the superpowers of this latest entry into a growing array of tech tools. One of the core use cases for AI in marketing is to help companies better understand their customers at a more granular level. The goal is to gain deeper insights into what customers want so that brands can tweak their marketing so that it resonates with what matters most to their target market. So if that's the objective, how do we turn that into an actionable plan? Where do you get started? I'm Jane Singer, and welcome back to A Seat at the Table, where we bring together our awesome audience, now in over 137 countries, with some of the smartest and most innovative people who join us as guests on this show. Today we're joined by Nick Bond, founding partner and head of product at Apex, an AI-driven solution that uses insights from customer research to identify how aligned a brand is with the desires of their customers and translate them into business and marketing strategies that improve CX, that's customer experience. Before Apex, he worked for a decade with market research firm Ipsos. Nick will be talking about how a brand or service provider can win more of their customers' hearts and minds and wallets when they know what the customer is expecting from them, the importance of analyzing a customer's behavior for clues as to how they are engaging with your brand, how AI and automation are changing the face of marketing, and how to turn your customers into brand ambassadors. The most successful marketing and sales teams have one thing in common: strong leadership. However, finding those talented leaders is not always easy. In fact, in a competitive market, it's gotten to be a lot more difficult. That's why leading organizations are turning to Asianet consultants. They have over 3 decades of boots-on-the-ground experience, giving them critical market knowledge and contacts. To learn more about Asianet consultants, check out their website at www.asianetconsultants.com. I'll also leave a link in the show notes. Meanwhile, let's sit down with Nick and find out how we can use AI to build strong customer relationships. Nick, I am just delighted to have you with us today on A Seat at the Table. Everyone is talking about AI. Very few people really understand exactly what that means, and I'm not going to claim that I'm an expert on it either, but I think that everybody is trying to figure out what is it, how they might be able to bring it into their organization, what specific use cases there might be, and particularly as we're talking about today, around marketing, around customer satisfaction, retention. So if you're ready, perhaps we can just dive in.
I love it. It seems AI just seems to be the hot topic for everybody these days. In fact, we have AI in our name, and it's actually been one of the best marketing tools lately that we could have. We have had more calls of people just being like, I've been tasked with exploring AI functionality so I can bring it into my organization. What do you guys do? Just because they want to know more about AI and how we might be able to help. Like, it's people are getting mandated with exploring this stuff. So for sure, happy to have the conversation. It's something that's you can't ignore. And honestly, if for any marketer or a customer experience person out there, it's career limiting to ignore it at this point. Like, you have to know this stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Well, in your opinion, what do you feel customers expect from businesses? I mean, how can a brand or a service provider win more of the hearts and minds and obviously wallets of potential consumers? What do you see happening there?
In terms of creating, meeting expectations?
Yes. What are the expectations, you might say, that people have when they're interacting with a company? What are they hoping to get, or what would be a winning way to approach them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Expectations, when we talk about it, because we talk a lot about that in our line of work, they're really a sum of two things, right? It's past experience. So whatever they've had with you or others in the past that informs what they think they can expect into the future. And any promises that you make, any sort of implicit or explicit promises that you or others make. And that's often the role of marketing, is to make those promises, isn't it? So operationally, what has happened in the past that they like or dislike? How are you mitigating anything that they dislike and really stepping on the gas on things that they have been known to love? You can only know this by doing the proper data mining, data analysis, getting to know your customers, what works, what doesn't. Know your business and know your customers really well to understand how they're going to extrapolate those past experiences into future expectations. And then, of course, around the promises made, that I mean, the explicitly through your brand and the things that you say, and then uh, implicitly just through your actions. You start to become a brand that's known for certain things, and you start to deviate from that, you run into some serious problems. And we've certainly seen companies that deviate from that. So it's a matter of those two elements. How are you managing and mitigating both that create those expectations and then live up to them? Like creating customer advocacy is not that hard. Just live your brand promise, know your business, deliver really well on those expectations, innovate against some of the expectations they've created. And you're gonna start winning pretty quickly against, growing your current customers and winning some new ones.
I think that's really interesting. And I think that it's definitely something, as you're pointing out, that a lot of companies overlook. Now, you talk about how the analysis of customers' relationship between their behavior and your brand impacts engagement. Can you explain how do you analyze that? Are there specific metrics that you're looking at? I mean, how can you measure or gauge these?
That's that's been basically my career's work for the last 6 years at least. The good news is that we, as marketers and customer experience people, we don't have to figure that out. There's scientists that have figured this stuff. Behavioral science has answered all of these questions. What makes people lean into brands, people, organizations, products? All we need to do is codify that and start pointing it at the direction of our business. And so what we've done is basically figure out that there are 16 sort of rational and emotional indicators that if we understand them, we're going to understand the behaviors that matter most to an organization. So those things being advocacy, am I going to speak well of you to others? And usage, am I going to grow with or start using your business? You understand those two things, and what drives them. I mean, you're 100 yards ahead of anybody else, even at that early stage. So yeah, those 16 indicators, just what's great about them is they come back to humans, right? That that's why we lean into the behavioral sciences. It doesn't speak about, oh, in this category it's that, and in that category over there it's this different set of things. It's like, no, we're all in the business of people. We're all in the business of motivating people. So if we understand what motivates people and then just say, okay, what does that mean for my business? Then I can start to make those adjustments. So we start looking at things on the emotional side that might be around dependability or empathy or joy. You'd be surprised how many people want enjoyable experiences, even from B2B brands or brands that they thought were just these boring price product contract relationships. Well, I actually want to enjoy the experience of working with you. What does that look like? Or we can look at more rational things like price, like service, like consistency, and that all plays into it as well. Once we understand, how people rate those in terms of how important they are in terms of that particular relationship, and then how well you're delivering on it and what that means, yeah, then it's just a matter of prioritization and doing some cost benefit analysis and where do I need to fix certain processes. And before you know it, yeah, your marketing team and your CX teams and your operational teams are not, yeah, you're not just meeting your customer expectations, you're understanding your customers' motivations. And you're aligning your business around them in a really customer-centric way that just because of the way it's been figured out drives advocacy, drives behavior, drives usage, which is what we all want anyways.
Yes, absolutely. Now, how would an organization go about measuring some of those things? I think you're right. Those are important things to measure. Are there things that they can do that are fairly simple, not maybe very simple, but within reach that they could do to measure that and get some feedback?
Yeah, totally. So our process is quite simple, but there are actually even like kind of homemade processes if you want to start that journey. If you want, the first thing is most companies use a metric
Right.
that gauges some level of overall engagement, and I'm going to be, for the sake of this call, fairly agnostic in terms of what metric that is. We think there are some that are better than others, but whether you use customer satisfaction or net promoter score or whatever it is, have that in your back pocket. But then you need
Right.
to understand what's driving it. And so that's really the big part of this question. So if there are some emotional, rational indicators and drivers that you figured out, maybe it is around your price, your product, your service. Maybe it is around things like a lot of companies use the word trust. I think it's a bit too vague, but a lot of people like the word trustworthy, authenticity. Figure out some drivers of those and then tie it back to your core metric. That's an easy starting point. Most companies do something like this. And most of this is done in survey, by the way. So it starts in survey, and it can be a quick one. Like any good survey should be like 2 minutes or less. When you start to say, okay, that's fine. It means, trustworthy, for example. I need to be a more trustworthy brand. My customers like that. The most important thing is when we start to pull in the customer language into that conversation, because that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean it, hey guys, let's go be more trustworthy. What does that even mean? We need to understand from the customer's language what they mean when they're starting to use these kinds of ideas. That's when you pull in natural language processing. That's when AI starts to become a really powerful tool for you. That's when you can look at what people are leaving on review sites, or what your customer service transcripts are saying, or what your chatbot transcripts are saying, and pull it all in and start to parse that out and create topics and themes and tie those back to those core ideas of trustworthy, or of consistency, or of those things we're talking about, to say, when people are talking about trustworthy, boy, in this case, they're really talking about our core product, and in particular, the product feature of X. And it looks like we're not delivering on that. So we better go fix product feature X. And now all of a sudden you're creating a bit of an action plan around an emotional construct that ties directly back to an overall idea like satisfaction or advocacy. So there are ways to do it. It's not that I don't know if I made it sound complicated. I'm hoping I didn't. Most CX or kind of research teams would sort of be comfortable in those kinds of terms. But if you don't, what we can't do is just look at customer behaviors and assume that we can extrapolate motivations. We can't just look at somebody's buying patterns and assume we know why they're buying, what their future intentions to buy are, and how to get them to buy more. That's probably not going to work because we don't know why they're there in the first place. We don't even know if they're buying it for themselves. And so we need to understand some of these more motivational indicators. You don't have to do it that many times. You could get away with it once or twice a year with a cohort of your customers if that's all you want to do. Again, better data in, better info out. You can do some minor work to understand motivations. It's going to lead you to way better types of conversations from a marketing perspective, from a brand perspective, from a CX perspective, and then from an operational and value driving perspective. So I would say do homework. Don't be afraid of the odd survey. There are ways to get at some of these indicators. And then once your survey is done, you pull in some of that natural language stuff, you can start to get pretty funky with the AI and start to answer some very interesting questions very quickly.
I think that's a really important point, because a lot of times we either overlook doing that, or let's face it, we don't want to hear the bad feedback, so we avoid getting any feedback whatsoever. And you're right, it's very, very important to understand how your customers perceive your service, your business, how it feels to interact with your company. Now, based on your experience, how is AI and automation changing the face of marketing? And just as importantly, how can brands leverage the power of AI at a time when people are increasingly concerned about privacy and digital security?
That's the crux of the question right now these days, isn't it? And so, like I said, for any marketer or anybody that deals in customer data or customer relationships, not using AI and not comfortable in it, get comfortable in it. Like it is now just the way that things work. The value that it can extrapolate very quickly means that if you're not doing it, you're being inefficient. You're not being what you need to be as a professional in this category. So it can be very simple, right? Like you can start by saying, like the simplest version of using AI right now as a marketer is go to a review site, copy all of your reviews from the last month or something, drop it into ChatGPT, leave a smart prompt that says something to the effect of, I am the CMO of this company. And if you don't trust the privacy piece, before you dump it into ChatGPT, you can knock out your name and knock out anything that would tie it back to you. So that's always a good idea. Put the information in and say, I'm the CMO. What are the top 3 to 5 things that I should be paying attention to based on these reviews that would require my immediate attention, either from things that are going well or things not going so well? that I should action next? And then you see what it spits out. Prompting is a really big deal. If you can figure out your good prompts, you start to win the day. But then all of a sudden, within 5 minutes, you're going to have sifted through dozens or hundreds of reviews, depending on how big or what your business is. And you're going to see, what can I do next based on customer data that my marketing and my customers are saying I should be doing. And I mean, of course, always go verify that, they're not making things up, like quickly scan the reviews. But for the most part, you're going to start getting some quick action items that say, here's what I should do next, without putting somebody on the task of monitoring reviews for like a day and then trying to manually do it. You just use AI and done it in 5 minutes.
Wow.
So that's like the lowest hanging fruit version of this. And then from there, it goes into things around data analytics and the way you can use multiple source data. Like that's kind of what we use from different from different text sources, from CRMs, from buying, customer behavior sources, dump it all in and start to really create some interesting customer personas, create some customer plans. You can do it from a customer service perspective to create some great levels of personalization on the fly. So your customer service reps are talking, it's hearing, it starts to spit up some conversation points. Like there are some really, really special technologies out there that don't get creepy into privacy, but just are listening for certain themes, listening for certain ideas and saying, okay, we should talk about that. Or that these customers here are all talking about this. There's an issue that we need to focus on. Without anybody having to waste time, resources, manpower, or costs to go figure that out manually, just doing it in the background. So the real power of AI is taking increasingly limited resources that marketing teams have and customer experiences teams have. It's just a reality right now. And removing all the sort of the mundane tasks so that the professionals can focus on the value-added tasks. They can focus on saying, here are some things we're learning. Now let's build a strategy to go fix that. Let's go drive some value. And very quickly you can use these types of tools to turn from a cost center into a value center. Because you're no longer taking resources. You're using tools to get quick wins and drive strategy and start driving that business. If you're not doing this, you're falling behind. So it is, again, you can go as simple, just looking at some reviews, or you can go as complicated as you want. And just know that even things like content creation, what business right now isn't in like a mild media business of content creation where you're having to like, who's producing the blog this week and who's writing the thought piece and the white paper, just for a kick. I'll tell you what something I did. I was writing a piece on this recently about how small marketing teams can use AI to start to expand their value quickly. But just to make the point, I wrote the white paper using AI, and it took me like 15 minutes, and it's 1,000 words. It's in my voice. I use really smart prompts. I scanned it. Of course, I edited it, and I made it sound really good. But it was mainly like a marketing team with limited resources. Somebody would be doing that for 2 or 3 days to write that proper piece, get it edited, and now you're doing it in what? Under an hour?
Wow.
Like those are the kinds of because we're not in the business of media creation but we need to do it as part of the gig right now. Use the tools. And so I'm not saying I do this every time, but it was kind of a point I was trying to make through the paper was that we can do this using these tools this easily. And it's still informative and good to read and smart. It doesn't sound like a robot wrote it. So yeah, it's become very, I would say it's imperative in 2024.
Yes, absolutely. I think you've made some very good points on that, and it gives people something to think about and sort of a jumping off point for getting their hands in the clay on using AI more effectively. Now, you talk about turning your customers into brand ambassadors based on their attitudes and behaviors. How can companies do that? What steps might they take? We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business Who hasn't had their tunnel of year? This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
That's, I think, when we're trying to influence behaviors that is what marketers do. That is what customer experience people do. One is obviously trying to get more non-customers into the tent, whereas your CX people are trying to grow your current customers more through great experiences and get them to keep choosing the brand. Either way, we're trying to influence behaviors. And that really happens, in my experience, it happens kind of three ways. Both, and we mentioned this earlier, a really good understanding of your company, your product, your wins, and everything, and also understanding the motivations of your customers. If you have those sort of ingredients in the bowl, you can start to bake up something pretty good. And the three ways are this. The first thing that I think anybody needs to do, and really this falls more in the CX world, is starting to mitigate specific issues. So if we know there are certain reasons that are creating roadblocks in terms of further customer growth, how do we mitigate that? How do we get, and especially if we know that these are really important factors. So a UI deficiency on our checkout online, we know that's going to turn off half of your purchases. So we need to make that go away. Mitigating those issues is a big deal. So understand and mitigate. The next one is communicate. So if we understand why our best customers love us, that's actually one of the best pieces of information you can have. And it's crazy to me how many people don't know the answer to that question. Bonkers crazy. If you don't know why your best customers love you, I don't know what your marketing team is doing, because that's the story they should be telling. They should be out there on a mountaintop with a megaphone screaming to the world why their best customers love them and convincing new customers that that's the best reason to come join this company. So your marketing team needs to be informed by your best customers and why they love you, and then take that story elsewhere. So we mitigate, we communicate, and then we innovate. And that's a piece that almost no data is driving right now, is how is our business going to keep evolving and adapting into the future? If you know the constructs of the expectations of your customers and of the market, let's take both sides. So we know what the market likes with competitors. We know what our customers like. We can find some white space. We can figure out what those factors are, whether it's a really emotional thing, whether it's really rational. And you take those ideas and you say, okay, what does that look like 5 years from now? What does that look like if our business or product was different, where we're still congruent with why they love us, but we're growing and evolving? And so we're innovating our business into new ways, and we're looking to adjacent markets. We're looking to adjacent technologies. Maybe we're informing our B2B business online process by what, your online bank is doing, and saying, why can't we do that? That's a good technology. That's a good user experience. We should be doing those things. Innovation in CX and marketing is something that we don't see. And I think there's one kind of big reason overarching is we don't have we don't have the mental space to do it. And so marketers and CX people are some of the most wound up, stressed out people I know in organizations. Their to-do list is always way longer than their resources they have available. The expectations to demonstrate value are off the charts. They're always looking over their shoulder for somebody that thinks they can do their job better. They are stressful jobs. And within that world where you're churning, there's not a lot of room for innovation. There's no slack in the system. If there's no slack in the system, nobody's taking that customer data and thinking about, what if we just whiteboarded this for a while? What if we took that and said, what does 2.0 look like? Mm-hmm. And this is where actually we almost come back to AI tools. If you can use the tools to get rid of the mundane tasks, to create some slack in the system, you can start to have different, better, more value-added conversations. So there's a big wind up for you. But I think that it's important to give ourselves the mental space to do that. So mitigating issues, communicating the wins, and innovating towards the future is how we can use these ideas of expectations to drive behaviors, not just today, but kind of predictably in the long term for our businesses.
I think that's really interesting. And I think you've given us a lot of food for thought. Now, Nick, I think that a lot of people probably listening to this and they have their own questions that they'd like to ask you. How can people connect with you? How can they reach out to you?
People can email me anytime, nbond@apexscore.ai. They can hit me on LinkedIn. I'm an open book. I love the conversations with folks anytime. You can go to our website, apexscore.ai, another one, obviously. The question of value is one that, do I have time to just kind of talk about this for 1 sec?
Sure.
Yeah. Both marketing and customer experience, if you're in either of those industries, I just mentioned it briefly. The expectation to demonstrate value is really crazy right now. It makes sense. The whole ROI, the requirement that we're not just using resources, we're creating value. Everybody's looking for that edge right now. And as much as we can keep that front and center in the conversations, companies really need to think about that. So here's the deal. Here's the problem that I see. I see a lot of marketing professionals that say, oh, my CEO is really philosophically aligned with a brand-led organization, or they're really marketing focused. It's great for my business. Or CX people that say, oh, my CEO is really kind of customer focused and customer centric. This is awesome. There's great philosophical alignment around them and what we do. And I just find that both sort of streams within an organization relying on philosophical alignment as a source of job security is pretty dodgy. Leaders change, people move, and you don't want the next leader to look at you and say, why are you here? I don't see value. I don't see how you're contributing to the bottom line. And then all of a sudden, LinkedIn is a bloodbath of marketers and CX people who haven't done a good job demonstrating value over the course of their tenure. Leadership has changed and their philosophical alignment's gone with it. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is, like, nobody questions, should my company have a CFO? Nobody questions, should my company have a COO? Like, all companies have these roles. But CXOs, Chief Experience Officers, CCOs, Chief Customer Officers, and I was reading some interesting stuff. Increasingly, CMOs, people are questioning why they even exist. The people that are closest to the customer, that are close to helping the company innovate, drive new behaviors, can create competitive advantage. People are questioning why they exist. And it's crazy. These are the people that should be like the heroes of the organization. And it's because that value connection hasn't been made. And so if I can give any advice to anybody in a senior marketing or a senior CX role, speak the language of the business every single time you're speaking. Speak dollars and cents. Figure out a way to tie the value you're doing, the work you're doing, to the value that the business is looking for, in the same language that the CFO uses, in the same language that the COO uses, margins and revenues. That starts to have a conversation that says, this person gets the strategy of this business. This person knows how the customer can contribute to the bottom line of this organization, to the strategic goals of this organization. So, philosophical alignment aside, they can't question your value. Your job is set in stone at that point. So, well, as much as any job is. So I would just say, like, it's a piece that's missing. Sometimes in these conversations, they get really philosophical. They get really, we should be customer led. If we're not driving the business forward in a really meaningful way, it can be very tough, though, to get the seat at the table that you're looking for. So there you go. That's the last piece I'll say, but I think it's a really, really important one. And as much as people keep their eye on the ball there, it's very, very good for job health.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for sharing that. I have learned a tremendous amount myself just listening to you, and I'm sure many, many other people have as well. I'm going to put all the links that you mentioned in the show notes, and I want to thank you so much for joining us here on A Seat at the Table.
You got it. Anytime, Jane.